Once upon a time, there were two lovers, Ahalya and Indra, in the city of Magadha. They were completely devoted and absorbed in each other. People said that they could die for each other. Their love story was the popular talk of the town. They were inseparable. But the king of Magadha desired Ahalya, and he was very angry with Indra because this Indra was snatching away the most beautiful subject from him. In anger and jealousy, he imprisoned both of them. But the two lovers were so engrossed in each other that they could barely feel the pain of confinement. The soldiers brutally whipped them from time to time. But surprisingly, they looked into each other's eyes and the bruises just disappeared. Then the king put both of them in a funeral pyre to burn them alive. But they came out unscathed, not a scar on their bodies. It is said that their love was so pure that it could pass any test. Hello and welcome to Indian Mythology in Modernity, and I'm your Sutradhar Oindrila, trying to understand the literary and cultural concepts in the story of Ahalya. This story that I just now told you is a very popular folklore in India, and it has been passed down the oral narratives of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. Now, stories are meant to be appreciated for their beauty and their power to fascinate us. And who are these Ahalya and Indra from this story? Are they the same whom we are introduced to in Ramayana? Or are these Ahalya and Indra someone from their previous birth? Or are these their later births? We don't know. But if Ahalya and Indra in this story are the same that we see in Ramayana and they are lovers in their previous or in their later lives, then we can take away a lot from their sin. Which sin? The sin of infidelity, the sin of betrayal, the sin of breaking the rules of a conjugal life, the sin of transgressing one's moral boundaries. Technically, both Ahalya and Indra commit this sin of infidelity in the Ramayana. But Ahalya, being a woman, is more harshly punished for her sin. Indra is actually exempted. He is released from his curse when all the gods gang up together and request Gautama to release him. Now, the episode of Ahalya and Indra in Ramayana goes somewhat like this. Indra comes to the hermitage of Gautama disguised as the saint and calls for Ahalya. The pious and beautiful wife comes out and, finding her husband wanting her, delightfully gives in. Ahalya and Indra go into the hermitage and Indra starts making love to Ahalya. But just then, the saint Gautama returns from the sacred bath and calls out for Ahalya. Ahalya is extremely shocked. If Gautama is calling her from outside, then who is this man in front of her? She quickly gets hold of her clothes and comes out in haste, followed by Indra after her. Gautama is burning in fury at this sight. He quickly throws a curse upon Indra. He curses him to grow 1,000 eyes on his body. At the same time, he also curses Ahalya and asks her to live her life as a stone for 1,000 years till the Raghuvanshi himself comes and delivers her from her sin. Now, this trope of disguise has a very important significance in Ramayana. Let's read. The trope of disguise has been used as a persistent and moving factor for temptation throughout Ramayana. Maricha, disguised as a golden deer, lures Sita. And here, Indra, disguised as Gautama, captivated poor Ahalya in the clutches of his desire. Wendy Doniger points out further differences between the two literatures as she says that in Valmiki, Indra does not change form but appears in the garb of Gautama. In Kampan, Indra changes form and, like a cat, tries to escape stealthily. In Kampan, Ahalya knew but could not let go of the joy, whereas In K.R. Srinivasa Iyengar's version, says that she does not know of Indra's covert guile. She further draws parallel between Indian epics and Greek dramas by concentrating on the theme of doubles and how it has been treated in different cultures. She compares Ahalya with Alcmena, where Ahalya is tested by a god who doubles her husband, and in Alcmena's case, Zeus comes in the guise of Amphitryon, Alcmena's husband, to seduce her. So basically, Wendy Daniger also agrees here that Valmiki's version of Ramayana and Kampan's version of Ramayana and also Krittivasa's and many other versions of Ramayana have some basic differences in the treatment of Ahalya. Though she says that in Kampan's version, Ahalya knew that this person in front of her is Indra, but I cannot quite agree with it because Valmiki clearly blames Ahalya for being an adulteress. Like he says that she's a wrong headed woman. And in Valmiki's version, actually, he says that Ahalya completely knew from very beginning that this guy in front of him is not Gautama but Indra. Let's read. Valmiki's Ramayana keeps the disguise part but attacks harshly on Ahalya. How? She knew it was Indra of the thousand eyes, in the guise of sage. Yet she, the wrong-headed woman, made up her mind, excited, curious about the king of gods, and then her inner being satisfied, she said to the god, I am satisfied, king of gods. Go quickly from here, O giver of honor, lover, protect yourself and me. But Kampan, on the other hand, is somewhat forgiving to Ahalya. Like, even he is talking about the disguise part, but he says that Ahalya wasn't quite sure if this person was Gautama or someone else, but this Kampan as well doesn't keep himself from blaming Ahalya for being the cause of this grave sin that has happened. Now let's see how. Once Lord Indra of the diamond axe waited on the absence of sage Gautama, meaning to reach out for the lovely breast of doe-eyed Ahalya, his wife. Hurt by the love arrows, hurt by the look in her eyes that pierced him like a spear, Indra wreathed and cast about for stratagems. Wow. Kampan definitely doesn't directly hit upon Ahalya saying that she was an adulteress or she was intentionally doing wrong, but he indirectly blames her that, okay, she is the cause of her misfortune. Her beauty is the cause that attracts Indra, and she is the one to be blamed for whatever is happening over here. Awesome. That is patriarchy, you know. Okay. But Krittivasa does a very fabulous job here. He gives a hint to the readers as well as to Ahalya from the very beginning of his narration that the guy who comes to Gautama's hermitage is Indra and not Gautama. Rather, he also plays a very responsible role by giving Ahalya clear dialogues that she is also having a sense of the fact that the person in front of her is not Gautama but Indra. So what Ahalya does in Krittivasa's version is, she first refuses to give in to the advances. She says that it is her prime duty to protect her husband's celibacy because she is his wife and she should keep to her dharma of preventing her husband from doing something which is not right. So first she refuses, but then finally gives in because it is the duty of the wife to obey her husband. Now the question here comes, if we assume that Ahalya knew that this person is not Gautama but Indra, then why did she do it? Now let's understand Ahalya as a woman. Let's understand Ahalya's situation in a society. She is married to a very old man who has vowed to live a life of asceticism. Though she admires him for his knowledge, though she admires him for his wisdom, and she worships him like a father figure, she is barely able to ever visualize him like a husband or a companion. She controls herself, she adapts herself to her new new role as a wife. From that, she was a daughter, and she dutifully keeps performing whatever she is given to do. But we cannot forget that she is also a woman, and she has the right to be happy. Every day she looks upon her husband, waiting patiently, waiting in eagerness that one day Gautama will look upon her with love. Every day she waits with her stomach throbbing that maybe this is the day that Gautama will give her some attention. Every day she dresses herself with beautiful flower garlands and beautiful flower decorations. She makes herself look good so that her husband sets an eye upon her. But she fails. She fails miserably in getting even the bit of love. But though we know that, yes, being the wife of an ascetic, it is her duty to keep her husband away. It is her duty to keep her husband from approaching her or to keep her husband from any kind of any form of physicality. But at the same time, she is a woman and she also desires to procreate, she desires to have love, and she desires to be happy. So when Indra comes to her, probably she knew that the person in front of her is not her husband, because the gestures and the expressions of Indra are much more aggressive and lusty than what Gautama could have ever been. But she perhaps intentionally tries to subjugate this consciousness of hers. She willfully chooses to unsee what her inner voice is telling her. She willfully chooses to give in to the advances of Indra. She responds for the first time, she responds to the natural instincts of a woman, of being loved, of being cared for. And perhaps this is the reason she knows within that she makes a conscious choice. And that's why she never defends herself later on when she is being punished. Not for once she stands up for herself or speaks for herself that no, I haven't done it willfully, or I don't know what is happening over here. She never does that. When she is punished, she gladly accepts what's coming upon her, and she is ready to pay the price for what she has done. And she is very firm that I have made a choice and I'm willing to pay for it. Now, why Indra does this? So there is a long story behind this. When Ahalya was made, Indra was mesmerized by her charm and grace. She was waiting for the girl to grow up, that so that he could have her as her own. Now, what happened when Ahalya grew up? When Ahalya finally reached her puberty, Gautama took her back to Brahma, who was her father, and Brahma decided that this was the right time to get her married. So what he did is he arranged for a swayamvar for Ahalya, where all the devas, the asuras, the gods, the kings, and the princes, and all the royal people were invited for the swayamvar, like it used to happen for most queens and princes. So what they had kept a game, which was to be the deciding factor for the swayamvar. The person who could do the rounds of all the three worlds would win Ahalya. Now that's a very tricky one. So let's see what Narada does in this episode. So when the Swayamvar episode was going on, Narada said to Brahma, the creator himself married his daughter Saraswati for the good of the universe. Otherwise, he could perish out of karma for that matter. You are not even the progenital father of Ahalya. As for the challenge, a cow is holy as the universal gods, or Tridev, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwar. She is the image of Kamdhenu on earth. She is worshipped as Surbhi and Sabala. One who traverses around this cow gets to travel the 16 worlds. And if the cow is about to give birth, the watching individual is redeemed from all his sins. As I was coming in, I saw your cow is pregnant. She seemed to be in her labor. Go out and circle her to prove to Brahma that you have circled the three worlds. Remember, Rishi, you are old. No one will give their daughter to you anymore. You must have a wife to go near the fire. You must have a wife to do the Agnihotra. Else you will be out of the Saptarishi Chakra. Just imagine. Narad is always playing the Cupid everywhere. Now he goes and advises Gautama that you need to marry Ahalya. You're old enough. Nobody will give you their daughter. You have no other option but to marry Ahalya. So just participate in the swayamvar. Do the rounds of your cow and go get Ahalya. That's smart. Gautama thought for a while. Probably this was the only way in which he could get a wife and keep Ahalya to himself forever. Most importantly, he couldn't lose his position in the Saptarishi Chakra. It was earned with a lot of penance and sacrifice. He took the words of Narada and went out to circle his cow, who was in excruciating pain. She was giving birth to a delicate calf. Rather than helping her in her pain and delivery, Gautama considered his career to be valuable and started circling the cow. Everybody in heaven applauded at his wisdom, intelligence, and greatness. Many compared him to the great Siddhartha Ganesh, who had chosen to circle his parents. Narada placed his card at the right place at the right time. He went near Brahma and said, "You will not get a better husband for Ahalya. Gautama is wise. He is Maharshi. He also knows your daughter well. He will be able to take care of her. She will also be valued and respected as the great sage's wife, wife of Saptarishi." Brahma was convinced. He did not want to rethink about it. He wanted to give away Ahalya to the sage once again, who was learned in the Shastras but rarely in domesticity. Ahalya did not disapprove of this decision. Young as she was delighted to realize herself going back to her roots, her homage, the known place, and the known person. But all this while, a deva had been waiting in pain, listening to their decision. The one who knew that the best things on earth belonged to him couldn't agree worse to this drastic decision of Ahalya being married to Gautama. He had a deep longing for this beautiful lady since the time of the apprenticeship to Gautama. He would be enamored every time he heard about the gracious Ahalya from his guru. Her grace, her mystic birth, her juvenile quest, and the descriptions of her celestial glory always fascinated him. He had decided to take the hands of Ahalya when she would be right to be married. He had participated in the swayamvar with great expectations. He was sure he will win because he is the deva of the devas. However, his hopes were disposed by the cruel plotting of the gods. So we can see how the love story of Indra just came to an end before it already begun. So what Indra decides is that he will make sure that he has Ahalya by hook or by crook. And in this way, Indra also decides to take revenge upon his Guru Gautama because he deprived him of having Ahalya. Now, Indra, he was blinded by his lust and his fury. Gautama, even though he was a saint, he was learned, but he was flawed too. He couldn't overcome his greed of becoming the greatest of Saptarishis, and he couldn't think of the wellness of a girl before his own valuable career, and he couldn't give up his position to become the greatest of Saptarishis, and he also failed to foresee the brutal and dangerous consequences that could come out of this mismatched tie. So why Ahalya had to suffer for others' flaws? Why was she turned into a stone? Now, was Ahalya truly turned into a stone? Or is it just a metaphor? Ahalya being turned into a stone easily sounds like a metaphor of the confinement of the soul, of confinement of desires and wishes. Like at the time of Mughals, many people were punished by being buried alive behind a wall because they dared to desire, because they dared to express what they thought, and the roots of which we can find in Ramayana now. So let's read more about this thing. Ahalya's curse to be turned into a stone sounds more of a metaphor for imprisonment of the soul, perhaps the body as well, inside a dark stone cage. The practice of burying people alive behind walls, which were popularly heard in the time of Mughal era, had their roots in Ramayana. Of course, we can see that. Chronicles of trapping people alive behind a wall of bricks or stone or burying them in a dry well have been heard much later in the 16th century. Cruel kings and emperors often punished the criminals in this manner to set an example for the whole kingdom. Whoever overstepped their limitations could be killed in the most brutal manner. Life taking as a capital punishment came to practice in this way. Even today, in places like Saudi Arabia or Kuwait, or those being ruled under sheikhs and sharifs, capital punishment is practiced in public. Chopping off hands of thieves or penalizing women cruelly for not abiding by the laws of the land are witnessed widely and also feared. In 2015, a woman was also stoned to death for adultery in Afghanistan. But for Ahalya, it was worse. The event of stepping over boundaries was exemplified in history by enstoning her for lifetime. Now, there are always two ways of looking at a thing. If this turning into a stone can be a metaphor for confinement, the turning into a stone can also be a metaphor for liberation. I mean, just imagine living your life like a stone or living your life in a stone body. It can also be a metaphor for renunciation, for indifference, for giving up your passions, your desires, your wills, your happiness, your pleasures. And when you renounce everything, when you give up everything, when you make yourself indifferent to everything that is around you, you reach the ultimate objective of life, which is moksha or liberation. Like in Bhagavad Gita, the emphasis on the soul and not the body has been again and again reiterated. So possibly Ahalya is doing the same over here. Her self-respect is left open to be bruised and mishandled, because when you are sitting there outside Gautama's hermitage like a stone, you barely have any power or ability to protect yourself. You cannot protect yourself from the weather conditions around you or from ugly human beings who are trying to come and scratch you and pull you or just throw stones at you. You're just unable to protect yourself. But perhaps this indifference or this state of renunciation or this state of meditation is a strategy on Ahalya's part to protect herself, to shield herself, her body and her mind from everything that is happening around her. Possibly, she just gives up everything to understand the true objective of life. Yes, in the beginning, Ahalya gives in to her temptations by accepting Indra. She does her mistakes, but then she performs the penance, the strict penance. She pays the price for what she does by renouncing everything, by shedding herself from the desires, by shedding herself from the pain, from the pleasure, from everything. And she just immerses herself in strict tapasya till the time Rama comes and delivers her, which we can say is that she understands the true meaning of life or the purpose of the soul. Now, Sujoy Ghosh's Ahalya featuring Radhika Apte, however, works as a protest over here. Here, the greed is the one who is punished and not the object of greed. It's An artistic comment on the 6 vicious sins in man, greed or lobha being a very prominent among that. And in this short film, very ironically, the seduced has to pay the price of confinement and not the seducer, which brings out the poetic justice from the tale of Ahalya. Today's readouts has been taken from the book Many Ramayanas, which is edited by Paula Richman, and from the book Kanya Yug, The Unsung Tales in Ramayana. The links to both the books have been given in the reference section. If you like the video, please like, share, and comment on it. And if you have any suggestions, you can also include that in the comment box. You can also subscribe to the channel by hitting the bell icon. Till then, happy reading.